Yo,
Do it. Three, two, one. Oh, super progressive. What's good, everybody? How we doing? Nick Muir is here with us today. Very excited for this chat. Nick, how are you doing, man?
I'm all right, Will. How are you, mate? Great to see you.
Yeah, it's great to see you too. Dude, everything's going great. 4th of July weekend here in the States. Been going out too much, been working too much, but it's been all a good amount of fun. So, how have you been?
I'm all right. So, does that mean you all sit around a big table and eat lots of turkey?
Yeah, almost. More like hot dogs and hamburgers and stuff. But yeah, no, super excited to have you here today. And we are, I don't know, we're here to chat about some like really exciting news because anytime there's someone gets wind of music coming out by you, feels like everybody immediately stops what they're doing and gets on it. But it's you have a new remix coming out this Friday, and I'd love to chat with you about it.
Sure, absolutely. That would be good. That would be good.
So,
Uh,
yeah. So, can you kind of start us off with what what is the track, and then can you kind of chat a little bit about like I'm sure you get asked to remix so many different tracks and stuff. How do you know that a track is right for you to remix?
oh, um, well, John gets quite a lot of approaches. I also get approaches. Um, you see, I think what John wants when he's thinking about what would be suitable to remix is he looks at the material that the people who are asking have done before, and he likes to think whereabouts they sit in terms of genre. Okay, and if uh, if he thinks that what they're doing is a good fit for what he thinks of as being bedrock music, then that's kind of the main thing, really. It's like because well, really, it is possible for us to come up with a version of most tracks. You know, if so, all I need is the source material, and then we can start working something up, which will which will eventually turn into a version of something. But if it's if the starting point isn't right, or if what the act concerned isn't really in line with what we're known for, then sometimes we'll pass. Uh, but most of the time we can always find something. If also if there's something obvious about the track, I have a listen through to it, and John has a listen through to it. And what he does is he tells me, well, I think we should try a certain direction. Okay. And so I listen to what he does, and then we try and start something and try and see if there's an element in the track that you could use as the basis for what you're going to build in terms of a remix. So, first of all, it has to be something that we believe in. And the next thing is there has to be something in there that we feel as if we could develop and make into a version of a piece of music that would make sense for John to play in a set of his. Yeah.
Totally. And no, that's honestly some really great insights. And this specific track that we that or that you that we're chatting about that you guys are coming out with the remix is Island Hills. It's Island Hills Thousand Lives.
Yeah, that's the tune. Yeah.
So can you talk to a little bit about like it's a Bedrock track, I believe, and how like not how long have you been working on this, but what has the process been like? Like when did you first kind of hear about the track, or is this a track where you or John heard something in it and you're like, hey, this would actually be a good remix for us?
Well, John, he signed Island Hill, who they are a band, or there's three guys. I believe that's right. One of the main men behind it is a guy called Dibby Doherty, who's from Northern Ireland. And I think John, there used to be a club in Northern Ireland called Port Rush, which is up on the coast there, which is kind of a legendary place. And Dibby, I believe, was one of the resident DJs there. And I think John has known him since those days. And then Dibby, he went traveling, and on his travels, he started to write some music. He took his laptop with him, and they wrote a bunch of songs, and he decided that he was going to make an album. And he played some of the demos to John, and I think John really liked it. And so he signed it, and their album is coming out now. And we wanted to do some versions of Island Hills music, which we could, show to maybe a bigger audience, or make some remixes that would make sense for John to play in a set of his. I think John, what John really liked about Island Hill was the fact that they are writing actual songs, and they have vocals in, and Dibby sings, and also there's it's not just purely electronic. There's guitar playing in there, and I think that John is a fan of that type of music, and so that side of it appealed to him. The fact that there were some songs involved and there was some singing involved. I mean, John isn't known for playing a lot of vocals in his sets, but these are kind of slightly bit different. They sort of fit in with the pattern of the label. They're just nicely constructed songs, and not something that you would necessarily expect to hear from Bedrock. And I think that's another thing that John liked about it, that the fact that it was something slightly bit different for the label. So that's how he got them involved and got their release going. Now, of course, the thing is that you want to introduce the music to as many people as possible. And also you want it to appeal to the people who like what Bedrock does anyway as a label. So we decided that we were going to do a version that would showcase one of the songs in a way that might appeal to people who wouldn't necessarily think of that music as being Bedrock type music. So that's where we jumped in on it, basically. So I got the vocal from the band, and the stems is what we use, the remix parts. And so once I had the vocal, and once I had the guitar parts, and various other bits like the percussion, then we just set about knocking something together that made sense to us. And like I say, it's kind of unusual for us to do that type of a song, but that's what makes it great, really, is the fact that there was something slightly different for us to work with, and also a song that made sense, and the lyrics were really good, and the way that it was sung was really good. So it's just a pleasure to work on it, really, man.
Oh, amazing. And this may be a kind of a dumb question, but I figure it's, I don't know, I'm not that technically sound when it comes to production, but when you're working
dumb question from you, Will. Never.
When you're working with a band and these stems may be coming from live instruments, I'm not sure in this case if they're coming from live instruments or they're electronically produced in the box, or digitally produced in the box. But is it different working with stems of live instrument sounds than stuff made in MIDI or whatever the proper term is?
Yeah. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. It is different, and it can be tricky. Now, the thing is, the obvious point is that, for instance, in this track, 1,000 Lives, there's quite a lot of guitar playing, and it's not, this is not stuff which is put together in MIDI. Somebody's got a guitar and they've physically plugged it into an interface and they've played it down, like a regular kind of recording session. Now, what of course that necessarily means is that it hasn't been time corrected in the way that you would with MIDI. It hasn't been, there's a performance involved. It's not just purely quantized in an electronic sense. There's a human aspect to it, and that means that the timing is as a person would play it. It's not, it's not time locked in the way that you do with a sequencer. It's not sequenced. It's an actual performance, and so you have to take that into account when you're using that material for a remix. Now, it depends on what the material is, but in this case, it was kind of, fairly soulful type guitar, almost bluesy in a way. Now, of course, if you start to deconstruct that and flatten it out and make the timing absolutely rock solid, then you're taking some of the soul of it away.
Definitely
seems to me. And I think one of the things that John likes about the music from Ireland Hill, and also generally, if you think about his music over the years, there's always been some soul to it. It's because it's not just, bash you on the head kind of super quantized. Some of it is, but I mean, somewhere along the line, there's a thread in the music that John likes, which is that there's a human aspect to it, in that it's kind of soulful,
Definitely.
And we've always tried to preserve that because, we think that's what connects with people really. And so if I was to take something like a guitar performance in the way that Ireland Hill have them and just chop it to pieces and quantize it really hard, it would be taking away I think it would be taking away from the personality of what that original part was, and we wanted to preserve that. So what I didn't do with it was quantize it and edit it to the end of next week so I could get it super tight.
Right.
I wanted to leave it so that it had a bit of breathing room and it had a bit of soul to it and it had a bit of ebb and flow, if you understand what I mean.
Totally.
So it's just so that it breathes a bit and it's still got that original live feel to it. And then, put that over a rhythm track that made sense and resonated with it. So, and then of course you've also got the vocals. So similarly, they're like, this is not something that's ever seen. They're not from a sample pack, and they're not made by any kind of MIDI instrument. It's a guy with a microphone singing into the microphone, which is then recorded like a regular recording session. So you've got all that material as well. So we wanted to make it so the track made sense in a set of John's, also made you want to move, makes you want to, makes you want to dance, has a dance feeling to it, but still has that soul and still has that human element to it. So that's what we set out to do.
Oh, I mean,
and I think we got near enough. I think it's worked out really well, I have to say.
Oh yeah, I mean we're all stoked to hear it, and the fan questions are are pouring in now, and some of them are really, really on topic to what we're talking about right now. Jurassic Trance, David Lovas, total legend, has a question for you. He's wondering, so he says, I'll just read his question. Sometimes remixes sound completely different to the original mix, and I'm curious if Nick will try to somehow incorporate all of the stem files into his version, or is it more focused on a single recognizable element or stem that then you build a soundscape around?
That's a really good question. Look, one of I wouldn't say look, one of our pet hates, or it's not that I hate it, but it's if you give a bunch of material to somebody and then it comes back and you can barely hear any traces of the original in the remix, then I think that's a wasted opportunity. That's how I feel about that. And also, one of the things as a producer or writer of the track, one of the things that really appeals is if you hear somebody who's used their imagination to do something original and novel with one of the elements of the track. It's like, surely that's part of the appeal of a remix, really, is the fact that somebody's thought about the material that they've got at their disposal and done something which is, engaging, clever and imaginative. So we always try and do that. It's a question of respect, I think. It's like we like to respect the original and pay homage to it, and see if we can enlarge its appeal in some way. So definitely do keep quite a bit of the original in terms of the ideas, the thematic stuff. I think it's a shame if you don't do that. And also, like I say, it increases the appeal if you can hear the original, and then you can hear something that somebody's done, which is, like I say, engaging and clever. So sometimes you hear one element which immediately jumps out, and you think, right, well, if we made that do this, affected it, treated it in some way, then that could be something that you could build the track on. I mean, it is always nice to have something that you can use as a central idea for any track or a remix. It's lovely to have that. I think a track does need an idea, in inverted commas, in order to resonate with people and to work as a piece of music. So sometimes we'll take an element and we'll treat it in a way that would be unexpected and different, and perhaps we might be able to hang the track on that. But another thing that I'm not so keen on is if a track just starts and it's got like a kind of groove which works as a groove, that's fine, and has a kind of arrangement, but it doesn't do so much, that can get a bit boring. I like the track to have an idea, like a central theme or something that is kind of, as John always says, something to hang your hat on, which he means hook, basically. So always try and spot if there's an opportunity to do that in a remix. But that's a really good question.
Oh yeah, no, thanks a lot for the really thought out well response.
Does that make sense?
Oh, that totally makes sense to me. It's like finding what makes the track and bringing it even more to life. And
maybe doing something with that. Yeah. That's right. That's the idea.
No, super cool. Another question from Alan Marshall. He said he may have already asked you this, but he had quite a lot to drink that night, so he wants to ask again. Do Nick and John sit down in the same place to work on music, or is everything done remotely?
These days, it's all done online. I mean, John's a busy guy. he's
Totally.
he's got he's got lots of things going on, and uh, what used to happen was that he would come over to my studio uh, back in the old days, and he would turn up and he'd have a big box of vinyl. Right, I'm talking 30 years ago, and he would get out his bits of vinyl and would stick them on the deck, and he said, "Well, I like this," and then he'd play me an element, and they said, "Why don't we try something like that?" And so then I'd try and make an element that sounded like that, and then gradually build up a palette. You know,
Yeah.
that's what we would do. And now, like I say, I live one side of London, he lives the other side of London. Uh, but nowadays, what will happen is he'll send me the stems, and then he'll give me some kind of idea of what he wants. Like it'll be a tempo, or it'll be a feel to the track. Sometimes he'll have specific instructions about what he wants to happen at the beginning of the track, and like a mood of it. And once we've communicated a few ideas like that, then he'll leave it with me for a day or two. I'll put together some ideas, then I'll send them to him, and he'll review it. And it's inevitably, yeah, that sounds okay, but could we start it a different way, or could we take this element out or put that element in, or the percussion might not sound right, the beat might not sound right, the kick might not sound right. You know what I mean? A few things like that. But he's very definite about what he likes and what he doesn't like. He's decisive about that. So that makes my job a lot easier. But the reason that we're still able to work together is because we're on the same page musically, Will.
Yeah, totally.
It's like he'll I mean, it happens a lot in music where, and it's happened to me over the years, where you'll be in a situation with somebody trying to put together a piece of music and you're just not speaking the same language. They'll say, okay, well, I think we should start with this, and then we should put some of that, and then put a bit of something else in. And before you know where you are, I'm thinking, well, I don't know what the hell you're talking about now.
Right.
So you have to be on the same page musically. And I think what John and I both can do is we can get an idea of what the track might sound like in our head.
Yeah.
But it's like I don't know what you would call that, or how that situation works, but it's like he's got some kind of idea in his mind about how something might sound, and it's not, he doesn't follow that slavishly. I mean, that there's still always room to let something develop, but we both seem to be able to sort of have some kind of oral imagination about how something might end up sounding, and we share that, and so that's really, really helpful. If you can say, he can say something to me about a certain element of the track, which he says, I don't like that, and I think we should change that for something that doesn't do, it's not quite so hard, or that it sounds too high, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And stuff like that. It's pretty simple stuff, except for the fact that when he says it, I can normally hear, okay, right, I understand what you mean, and correct it,
Yeah,
and
totally. It's like you guys
that,
have been working for so many years. So if John says something like, or you say something like, it needs to be bigger or something like that, like the track needs to sound like, or it needs to be hitting harder, that could mean 1,000 different things to 1,000 different producers. Like you said, you guys are speaking the same language. It's really cool.
Yeah, that definitely seems to be the case. There's this funny phrase that Darren Emerson. We've done a bit of work with Darren over the years, and he has this phrase which we often use between us, John and I, which says, when something comes on in a remix and it's not quite right, it says, oh, it makes you turn your face, which is like what he means. It kind of makes you go, oh, no. And
You
so
can't look at it. Yeah.
no, it's like no, that it's like I wish it didn't do that, you know. And so if John hears something and he said, "Yeah, that made me turn my face a bit," I know exactly what it means. It's like, please, you know, the cringe factor, turn it down a bit at that point, you know.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, from I this is like a dream situation. My two all-time favorite producers, one asking a question to another because Luke Chable's in the chat and we're taking it back because he has a question for you. And that question is, he wants to know, tell us about Heaven Sent. How did that come about? Was it a reaction to trance taking over the scene at the time? And finally, did he have a feeling that it was going to be a special tune?
Hello, Luke. You're right. Super talented guy, by the way.
Oh my gosh.
As
I could talk for
who's
hours
listening
about
to
it.
This podcast will know that he's hot. Oh, Heaven Sent. Well, God. I remember writing the riff of it, and I just thought, right, we need something. And this was the brief from John. Really, it's like we're going to start up the club night at Heaven. We're going to start off the label, and we need something that sounds big, you know. And I'm like, right, okay, I get that. So I can remember I just came up with the melody from Heaven Sent, and I have no idea how I came up with that melody. I mean, I it's like everybody who does this kind of thing will tell you. I just sit down behind the keyboard and just play stuff, and then sometimes, you know, something will fall into place. They just, you know, you hear musicians talk about this in kind of vague fashion, but the melody was just something that, you know, I was playing around behind the keyboard, and you think, oh, okay, I like that bit, I like that bit, and that's okay. And so I ended up with that little phrase, that little motif. But the next stage was, you know, I had this ringing in my ears that John was saying, I want it to be big, you know. And so I just started doubling it and sampling it and playing that riff on another instrument, and then doubling that, and then sampling that, and then building it up that way until eventually, you know, you have this multi-layered version of that tune. And it's a good question, actually, whether or not it was a kind of reaction to what was going on with trance at the time. And I don't think it was. It was just that we wanted something that was sounding, you know, powerful. That's what we were trying to do. We were trying to make something that sounded, you know, big and powerful. And that's why the track ended up as big as it was in the end. Lots of, you know, also another element to that track, Wills, was our friend John Gray, who's a mix engineer, and he used to mix all the early Bedrock tracks. We were lucky enough to have access to big rooms when in the early 90s. I had a programming room in a studio in London, which had like a big Neve desk downstairs, and there was an AMEC desk, nice big one, in one of the other rooms. And John Gray, who's our friend, he used to come and mix the tracks. We'd take the samplers in, you know, have like 2 or 3 samplers going with 20 or 30 outputs, and then just put everything up the desk and mix them that way. So I didn't do the actual mix downs, but for Heaven Sent, John Gray came in, and I had a Yamaha 02R desk, which is like a digital desk, and I'd been doing some work on that. And when John Gray came in to mix Heaven Sent, he realised that the desk was set up a certain way. There was the compressors on the desk, which it had one per channel, were like they were super squashed, and as soon as he started running the track through these highly compressed channels, it had a certain sound to it, and he kind of left it that way. And that's one of the other reasons the track sounds the way it does, is because it is kind of very pumpy and compressed. And that was just sheer accident, because I was mucking about on it, doing something previous to that. And then the mix engineer, John, came in, ran everything through it, and it had a certain sound. So he preserved that. So, the way that these things kind of happen, happenstance is such a big part of it. But the other thing about that is that you have to be able to hear it when it happens, when you're making this type of music, or any type of music, I think. But it's like I say, he started off the sequencer with the channels plugged up through the desk. It had a certain sound, and John Gray's immediate thought was, that sounds great, let's keep that. And that's just sheer chance, really. So I think, as usual, it's just, luck and happenstance has such a lot to do with it. And the trick is to be able to spot it when it happens. That makes sense?
Yeah, totally. To know, like, you have something there. It's so interesting. Yo, Nick, thank you for the question too, Luke, because it made me think of something. I saw the newest Spider-Man Across the SpiderVerse, the SpiderVerse 2, crazy animation Spider-Man movie. All-time favorite movie. Bro, you're in the Spider-Verse. Like, you are a member of the Spider-Verse. And my question is, what year was it? 2003 maybe, the Spider-Man show that you soundtracked? These soundtracks for these Spider-Verse movies are so good. Has Sony contacted you about bringing you and John back for a Across the Spider-Verse 3 track on the soundtrack?
Have they?
Yeah, have they? Because
yes.
If not...
No, they haven't.
Well, I'm sending this clip to them, because that absolutely needs to happen. And is the intro song, or like the theme you made for that show, was there like elements of Heaven Sent in that, or was it like an edit of Heaven Sent? Just because I'm listening to it and it sounds like it came out of that session.
Well, that's very astute of you, Will. Actually, no, that's not from the same session, but you have to remember that what happened around about that time was that John had he'd won the DJ Mag poll, and in those days, DJ Mag polls kind of, it was kind of a bigger deal than it is now, I would say, and that meant, that the management and agencies and everybody else were able to point to John and go, look, he's the #1 DJ in the world. It's kind of meaningless, really, but it's like any kind of awards thing, isn't it? That's what it's for. And so Sony got in touch with John to do this Spider-Man new animated series, chiefly on the back of the fact that he'd won this DJ Mag award, and they were aware that Heaven Sent, which is what we had out at the time, was kind of, was doing pretty well, and they wanted something similar to that. And so that's what we did. We wrote a track which had the signature of Heaven Sent in it, but wasn't actually Heaven Sent. And actually, that is not a version of Heaven Sent. That is a completely separate and distinct track, but it just had that sound to it.
Yeah, totally.
So that was what we did with that. They loved Heaven Sent, and they said, we want something that has that same, that has that same kind of footprint. And so it's a separate and distinct track, and it's not actually taken from those sessions, and it's not a remix or anything like that. But definitely, in terms of the sound of it, it was the sound that we were using at that time. So uh, yeah, obviously, I'm very pleased and proud of what we did on that, and it was a kind of special time, really, and
Totally.
it was hard work, but it was it was an amazing time, and I felt very honoured that we were actually involved in that. And I learned a lot, and
Yeah, it's super cool, and it's on Disney Plus. I've been watching it, bro. It's awesome. It's like been nerding out on Spider-Man, and I'm like, wait a second, John and Nick did the soundtrack. This is like the sickest meshing of two things I love ever.
so it's still being shown then.
Oh yeah, it's cataloged on Disney Plus. They have all the Spider-Man stuff,
Oh
so
wow,
it's all there. Yeah.
Spider-Man, the new animated series.
Yes. Yeah.
That's so cool to know. See, that was made for MTV, actually.
Yeah, it's so interesting, like how all this stuff worked.
Bizarre, you know.
Yeah. But no, it's awesome. All right. I want to be respectful of your time. We'll do a few more questions. Also, it's pretty funny on Sundays. I like host, not like mixing competitions, but I'll post like a theme for all the followers to go and make mixes about. And this week's is Northern Exposure 4, and that goes down at 10. So we'll have time for a few more questions. I saw one up here that I really, really like. Okay, one person I met through these mixathons, the Son of Man. This guy is one of the great, like, I met him in a club in London finally. His mixes are amazing, and he wants me to ask you, where does Nick see the progressive sound moving over the next couple of years? Talking about Island Hill and live guitar sounds, are we heading into an indie guitar sound similar to the 2003 to 2005 era?
What? Who's is this guy? Go under the name Son of Man?
Yeah, he does.
It's like that's a kind of, that's a reference, isn't it? Really, to do you remember when Sasha was first starting out? There was a kind of famous Mix Mag cover.
Yeah.
Do you remember this?
Totally.
Where it had Sasha and Son of God written on it. You know, um, what what do I think is going to happen? Um, I don't know, man. One of the things that is great about the scene that we're in is the fact that it does take little turns and, you know, diversions, and it starts to do things that, you know, you didn't necessarily think it was going to do. Like, I've noticed lately that the general tempos that we've been working at have increased, right? Such a weird thing, the tempo thing, but it's like for years we were sort of working around about 1 2 3, 1 2 4, that kind of thing, and now for some reason we've gone up a step, and things are kind of coming in around about 1 2 6, 1 2 7, 1 2 8. All of a sudden, just that little spike of energy has come in, and uh, that was really odd, and I don't know why that happened. Also, um, there seems to me lately to be more of a kind of uh, there's just a bit more of an 80s thing going down, you know, like some it's kind of you know, like new ordery type bass lines, and also real prominent snares and that kind of thing. Like uh, that's almost like a sort of reaction to um, some of the more musical aspects of this area. You know, it's like it all of a sudden seems to have taken a little bit of a tougher turn, and it's got faster. And as I say, it's sounding a bit more snappy at the moment. Um, Maybe I shouldn't say this, but we've done this thing with Captain Mustache, which don't tell anybody.
I won't say anything.
um, I really like that record. And I don't know what the plans are for release, and I probably shouldn't have said anything. But anyway, there we are. But that has those kind of elements to it, and I think that works really well. Um, as to whether or not we're kind of going, whether the indie thing will sort of become more prevalent in the type of music that we're doing, I'm not so sure. But one thing is for sure is that unless you try these things out, then then they won't happen. So,
Right.
and the other thing is, it's like you've got to try and make it interesting for yourself and also for the people who come, to listen to the music. It's like just just keep ringing the changes a bit if you can to something that's interesting. John's always listening out for something which is interesting, a bit imaginative, a bit different, or put some recognizable element into a slightly different context. You know, it's those are the things that engage John. I'm pretty confident in saying, and you know, he likes he likes things to make sense musically, to be done well musically, but also to be imaginative and you know have a slightly different uh, contextual idea to them. It's that sort of thing that John loves to hear. If it's if it's if it's too same old, then he tends to shut off quite quickly. So um, it might happen, son of man. It might just happen.
Oh,
If you make
awesome.
it happen, it'll happen.
All right, we'll wrap it up. We'll wrap it up here. Probably the final question I'm gonna take from Rami, and he's been a long time supporter. And his question, and I'm gonna expand upon his question a little bit. His question is, what new artists does Nick recommend to check out? And I want to expand that a little bit because it's something I'd be really interested to hear your take on. You're a pro at what you do. You work in the studio, know exactly what you're doing. But what do you do to find inspiration, or just to bring new ideas into the mix of what you're, of your workflow, or to try new things? Where are you finding inspiration, whether that's listening to other artists or doing something completely out of music? I was talking with Omid, and he was saying how he just loves to be in nature, and that's like where he goes and feels inspired musically to bring that back. But I was wondering what it's like for you.
Look, there's so much music that you could go and immerse yourself in, and I would say, see, the thing is, I'm a general fan of music, as a lot of people who are involved in this scene are, and I'll go and listen to, uh, you know, my friend Simon Rogers and I. Simon was in Slacker with Shem McCauley, and we're big fans of contemporary classical music, like people like Berlioz and just modern composers who were writing in the 20th century, and it's kind of avant-garde music. And you know, I'm a big fan of Frank Zappa, and so these people are monsters, man, in terms of their grasp on how to the mechanics of music works. And I think it's always worth seeking out and going listen to live musicians, hearing what they're doing, and also stuff that you wouldn't normally go to listen to, like I say, some orchestral stuff, and some avant-garde stuff. um, uh, that can give you ideas, that can spark stuff off. But also, just what I find happens to me is that I'll be sitting there like doing my thing, doing my remixes and trying to come up with new stuff, and then occasionally you come across somebody like Luke Chable who land a tune on you which just kind of blows your head, and you think, damn it, they're so good, why aren't I that good? and and that gets my head back down on it. Just the sheer admiration for people who are really good at this, and trying to get that, raise the bar of your own productions. That's the thing. It's, music is one of those things that demands commitment, and whether that's commitment in terms of listening to different stuff, new stuff, commitment in terms of the amount of work that you're prepared to put in getting your craft better. It's a really demanding mistress. So I would say that there's never any lack of inspiration, but definitely I would say, especially with electronic music as well, you can, that's why DJs are so good to listen to. DJs are worth their salt, because they'll pick out something from 25 or 30 years ago that you forgot about, and they'll represent it, and you're like, yeah, man, that is absolutely so good. And a lot of the time, you'll hear something from, like I say, the mid 90s, and you'll think to yourself, well, yes, why aren't people doing that now? And that can be an inspiration. It's like looking back over what people have done, and recontextualizing it, and not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Use those ideas and the sounds that people are getting. That's what I'm saying. That it's a constant battle against everything getting too samey. So that's your job as a musician or a producer, I think, is to engage, excite, and inspire. It's part of the job. So just keep looking around, keep listening, listen to something different, listen to something from a different, country, listen to something from a different time period. Put those two elements together, mix and match, like, it's all that stuff, that's what art is. That's what you're doing. You're creating, you're using what's already there to represent and create something new. So it's like, don't ignore what's right in front of your very eyes. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally, man. I mean, thank you so much for not only on this answer, but all answers, taking your time. And I know how big of fans these guys in the chat are. And so thank you for just your thoughtful answers and taking the time, not only for me, but to just chat with your fans face to face. Super Progressive is, for me, more and more becoming all about just these people, these clubbers who have dedicated their lives to the music, collecting the music, going to the shows, bringing them face to face with their favorite DJs and producers so they can ask questions like this. And
it's a wonderful thing, man. And also, it's like that's what these people have in common. It's like the live stream that I do. It's like we're all together in kind of the same space, really.
Yeah, exactly.
And the people that are into this are super into it, and I love that. I absolutely love that fact. That it kind of gives me hope and inspiration and general good vibe about the world, that people are as enthusiastic about stuff like this as they are. So nice one, everybody.
Yeah, this was great. We're really excited for the remix to come out on Friday. And I'm definitely going to be doing a reaction video to it. So I am super stoked. I want to thank everyone in the chat for your awesome questions. I want to thank Nick for taking the time to join us. And this was great. And hopefully we can do it again soon again. I mean, you're my favorite recurring guest. So thank you so much.
Excellent, Wills. Thanks for everything you do. It's been always a pleasure, mate.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll see you in Manchester.
See you in Manchester. I'll see you on Super Tuesday as well.
Excellent.
All right. I'll see you guys. Bye.
Cheers. Bye. Bye.